It was late when I checked into the Crestfield Hotel, a place that seemed stuck in time. The long, dimly lit corridor stretched out before me, its plush carpet muffling my footsteps. The flickering overhead lights barely illuminated the hallway, casting long, twisted shadows that seemed to writhe on the walls. A sense of unease hung in the air, making it feel as though something unseen was watching me from the corners of the hotel. The hallway seemed endless, every door marked with faded numbers, but I had been assigned room 3133, an odd number for such an old hotel. But I didn't think much of it at the time. As I walked down the corridor, my eyes darted to the door ahead of me, the one that matched my room key. The keycard slot next to the door glowed red, like some kind of warning. I slid my card into the slot and heard the lock click open, the door creaking as I pushed it open. The air inside was thick, as if it had been sealed off from the outside world for years. I stepped in, the room feeling cold despite the warm summer night outside. The bed was unmade, its sheets rumpled as if someone had hurriedly gotten up. The bedside clock blinked 3:33 a.m., the numbers glowing red in the dark, the seconds ticking away in the silence. There was an unsettling quality to the stillness of the room, the kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for something to happen. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. A soft gust of wind blew in from the cracked window, making the curtains flutter. I turned away from the window to settle in for the night, but that's when I noticed the shadows. They weren't just cast by the dim light. They seemed to shift, growing longer, twisting unnaturally as if they were alive. I reached for my phone, but it had died. The landline next to the bed began to ring, its sharp sound cutting through the silence. I picked it up, only to be greeted by nothing but static. Then, a faint breathing. I could barely make out the sound, but it seemed to come from the other side of the room. I hung up, my pulse quickening, as I lay back on the bed, trying to convince myself it was just nerves. I glanced at the mirror across from the bed. The reflection was too still, but it wasn't until I blinked that I saw a handprint appeared on the fogged surface of the mirror, as if someone had pressed their hand against it. I gasped, sitting up quickly, but the handprint vanished almost as soon as I saw it, leaving the mirror spotless. My heart raced. I looked around the room, but there was no one. I was alone. The clock still blinked, 3:33 a.m., its red digits burning into the dark. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling of being watched never left. I rose from the bed and walked to the bathroom, hoping to clear my head, but as I stepped inside, something caught my eye. The dim candlelight flickered, casting strange shadows on the bathroom walls. I approached the mirror slowly, half expecting to see another handprint. But this time, the glass was clear, almost too clear. I reached out, touching the cool surface. As my fingers brushed the glass, the reflection shifted again. The shadows in the bathroom seemed to stretch and twist, as if they had a mind of their own. But just as quickly, the light flickered and everything returned to normal. I felt a sudden chill, and as I turned to leave, I noticed the bathroom door had swung shut. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I opened the door, stepping back into the hallway, but something was wrong. The hallway was darker now, the shadows longer, more oppressive. There was a trolley at the far end of the hall, its presence strange and out of place. 'Twas a housekeeper trolley filled with towels and cleaning supplies. But there was no housekeeper in sight. The cart stood in the faint light, abandoned, as though someone had left it in a hurry. I froze for a moment, trying to make sense of it. But the feeling of being watched returned, more intense than before. The faintest sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, but when I turned, no one was there. The lights flickered above me once more, casting the hallway into a terrifying dance of light and shadow. I turned back toward the room, the door now looking even more ominous than before. The red glow of the keycard slot was gone, leaving the door closed and locked. But as I reached for the handle to enter the room, I stopped. The clock was still ticking, 3:33 a.m., but this time, something was different. The shadows, the reflections, the strange occurrences, they were all connected. The hotel was trapped in a loop. A loop I had just walked into, and I could feel it closing in on me. I stood frozen, staring at the door to room 3133. The keycard slot had stopped glowing. Its red light now completely extinguished, leaving the door in a silent, ominous stillness. But the sensation of being watched never left. The hallway stretched. Behind me, empty, and the only sound was the hum of the dim overhead lights flickering above. I should have gone back. I should have left. But something about the door, something about the red light, urged me forward. I reached for the handle once more, this time feeling a chill seep through my fingers as I twisted it open. The door creaked loudly as it swung open. The room inside looked the same, merely so. The bed was still unmade, the sheets tangled in a mess as though no one had slept there. The clock on the nightstand still blinked 3:33 a.m., its red digits glowing in the darkness, the seconds ticking steadily, but it didn't make sense. How could the time still be stuck at 3:33 a.m.? It should have moved forward. It should have progressed. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, the click of the lock echoing in the stillness. The room was unnervingly cold, colder than it had been when I first entered. I stood there for a moment, just looking around. The shadows in the corners seemed darker, more defined, as if they were moving with a life of their own. I shook my head. Trying to clear it, I needed sleep. I needed to stop thinking about the strange events that had already started. The clock blinked again. 3:33 a.m. I stared at the time, the pressure in my chest growing. I walked toward the bathroom, hoping that maybe the change in atmosphere would calm my nerves. As I crossed the room, I noticed something odd. The keycard slot outside the door was glowing red again. I hadn't noticed it before, but now, from inside the room, I could see the faint glow spilling from under the crack of the door. My heart skipped. I hadn't used the keycard to lock the door again. I was sure of it. I froze, staring at the keycard slot, and then turned to the door behind me, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. Slowly, I opened the door, my eyes darting to the hallway. Nothing. The hallway was empty, just as I had left it. The faint flicker of the overhead lights gave no sign of anyone being near. But the housekeeper trolley, was gone. I closed the door with a quick snap, heart pounding in my chest. The moment I locked it, the eerie quiet of the room seemed to intensify. Something wasn't right. I knew that much now. I glanced back at the clock. 3:33 a.m. How had the time stayed the same? Was it possible? The night felt endless, like I had fallen into a loop. The room, the hallway, the eerie sensation of being watched, it was all part of some twisted cycle I couldn't escape. I walked to the window, hoping for a change in the view, a glimpse of the outside world. But the curtains were drawn tight, the room sealed off from anything beyond the hotel. I reached for the edge of the curtain, pulling it back slightly. The view was nothing but darkness. There was no streetlight, no cars, no people, just endless blackness. A cold shiver ran through me as I realized how isolated I felt. Then, sound faint at first came from behind me. The softest knock. Wasn't loud, but the timing made it worse. It was just after 3:33 a.m., and it was coming from the bathroom. I turned quickly, my pulse quickening. The door to the bathroom was slightly ajar, the darkness within more inviting than it should have been. I walked toward it cautiously, my breath shallow. Another knock. Louder this time. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, only to find nothing but the dim glow of a flickering candlelight. The mirror, once clear, was now fogged up. A handprint slowly materializing on its surface. Just like before, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I watched the handprint appear. One finger at a time, as if someone had pressed their palm against the mirror from the other side. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to run, but the words wouldn't come. I backed out of the bathroom quickly, closing the door behind me. The room had changed again. The shadows seemed deeper, the air heavier. And then I saw it at the edge of my vision, in the mirror on the opposite wall. Something or someone was standing behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. I rushed to the door, desperate to leave. But when I reached for the handle, it wouldn't turn. It was locked again. 3:33 a.m. blinked on the clock. The keycard slot on the door glowed red once more. I couldn't bring myself to look at the clock again, but I felt its presence, staring at me with its unblinking red digits. 3:33 a.m. It felt like an anchor, pulling me deeper into the strange, endless night. The bed in front of me was still. Disheveled, the sheets twisted in chaotic folds. It had been like this since I first arrived, yet no matter how many times I blinked, no matter how many times I tried to close my eyes, it always came back to this same moment. I tried to sit on the edge of the bed, my mind racing with 100 different thoughts, none of them making sense. The room felt suffocating, like the walls themselves were closing in on me. Every shadow in the room seemed to stretch longer, darker, and more twisted than before. The lights overhead flickered again, casting eerie shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls, stretching unnaturally. I glanced at the clock. 3:33 a.m. It had only been a few minutes since I last checked. Had it been minutes, or had it been hours? I couldn't be sure anymore. Time didn't seem to follow its normal rules. Here, the room felt ... Trapped, the shadows on the walls weren't just cast by the dim lighting. They seemed to breathe, to move of their own accord, as if the room itself had become alive. Aware of my every breath, I rubbed my eyes, hoping it was all a trick of exhaustion. I was just tired, right? I needed to sleep, but I couldn't. No matter how heavy my eyelids felt, no matter how tired my body was. Every time I closed my eyes, the room seemed to shift. I opened them, and there was the bed, still rumpled, still untouched, still in the exact same disarray as before. I stood up quickly, shaking off the unsettling feeling of being trapped in a loop. I needed to find some clarity. I needed to break free from whatever this was. I walked over to the window again, but it was still the same blackness. Nothing but the void of night. I could feel the room closing in on me as I pressed my palm against the cold window, looking out at nothing. And then I heard it. A soft creak. Almost imperceptible, but it was there. The sound of the bed shifting. I whipped around, heart racing, and stared at the bed. The sheets shifted, just slightly, as if someone had moved beneath them. But there was no one there. I froze, staring at the bed, the room suddenly colder. The shadows around the room seemed to grow thicker, darker, swallowing the light. And then, there it was, the whisper. A voice faint at first, but growing louder with each passing second. "Get up." The whisper sent a chill down my spine. It was coming from the bed. No, it wasn't the bed. It was coming from beneath it. Something was down there. I couldn't tell if it was a voice or if it was the room itself speaking. But I knew one thing. For sure I wasn't alone. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. My eyes darted around the room, searching for anything out of place. But everything was exactly as it had been since I arrived. The room hadn't changed, but I had. I felt as though I was slipping further into madness with each passing second. The clock blinked again. 3:33 a.m. I turned my back to the bed, desperate to leave. But the moment my feet hit the floor, I heard it again, a soft, distinct noise. It wasn't a creak. It was something worse. Something closer. I turned around. The bed had moved. The sheets were now tangled and twisted, as if someone had been thrashing beneath them. But there was no one there. The bed was still empty, and yet it felt as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Something I wasn't ready for. I reached for the door handle, my fingers trembling as I tried to turn it, but the door wouldn't budge. I could hear the faint whisper again, but this time it was clearer. Stay. Stay with us. I jerked away from the door, a cold sweat running down my back. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out everything except that voice. I backed toward the bathroom, my body stiff with fear. The door behind me clicked shut. The keycard slot glowed red again, but it wasn't just the slot this time. The entire door shimmered as if it were alive, pulsating with a dark, unnatural energy. I stumbled toward the bathroom. But when I opened the door, it was like stepping into another world. The bathroom mirror fogged over with condensation. The handprint that had appeared before, now larger, more distinct. The cold, flickering candlelight cast long shadows in every direction. And something, a shape, moved in the reflection just behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. Nothing there. I stepped back, and then I saw it, a shadow, a figure standing in the doorway. It was tall, elongated, and almost featureless, like a twisted version of myself. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth stretched in an unnatural grin. And then the clock blinked again. 3:33 a.m. I was caught, trapped in this nightmare. Over and over again. I couldn't breathe. The shadow in the reflection seemed to move with every breath I took, its elongated form swaying just behind me in the mirror. I turned quickly, heart pounding in my chest, but there was no one there. Nothing. The bathroom, bathed in the faint glow of candlelight, was empty, but the handprint still there, slowly forming on the fogged glass, just as it had before. A cold sweat ran down my spine as I stepped closer, my reflection staring back at me, wide-eyed with fear. The handprint continued to materialize, one finger at a time, as if someone were pressing against the glass from the other side. The flickering candlelight cast erratic shadows stretching across the bathroom walls, warping the room in impossible shapes. The air grew colder, denser, pressing in on me like the walls were closing. I backed away from the mirror, but the handprint remained. No matter how much I willed it to disappear, it stayed. And then, in the dim candlelight, I saw it, two figures in the reflection. One was me, staring at the mirror in disbelief, and the other, was behind me, obscured by the fog. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. Nothing. The bathroom was silent, empty. I turned back to the mirror, but now the handprint was different. It wasn't just a handprint anymore. It had spread out, its fingers elongated, twisting into something grotesque. The entire mirror seemed to ripple, warping as if it were made of liquid, pulling me into its depths. I grabbed the edge of the sink, trying to steady myself, but my legs felt weak. The sensation of being pulled into the mirror was overwhelming, like something beyond the glass was trying to reach out to me. Suddenly, the room was plunged into darkness. The candlelight flickered and died, leaving the bathroom completely black. The mirror was now completely shrouded, its surface covered in thick, dark condensation. A whisper echoed through the room. It was soft at first, but then louder, more distinct. Look into the glass. I stumbled backward, my pulse racing. I didn't want to. I didn't want to look. But the voice in my head, the whisper that crawled beneath my skin, pushed me forward. With trembling hands, I reached for the mirror, pressing my palm against the cold glass. The moment I touched it, the surface rippled like water. And then I saw it. The reflection was no longer just mine. It was someone else. Someone wearing the same clothes as me, standing in the same position, but with eyes black as night, deep and hollow. Its mouth stretched wide in a grotesque grin, its body distorted, twisted in a way that made my stomach churn. The reflection's hand moved slowly, deliberately reaching out to me. I recoiled, but the reflection's fingers reached toward me, pressing against the surface of the glass as though it were trying to pull itself out. A sudden crash echoed through the bathroom. Taser, and I jerked back. The mirror shattered, shards flying everywhere, but not a single piece hit the floor. The glass hung in the air, suspended like a million floating fragments, their edges glowing with a sickly green light. My heart pounded in my chest. I was trapped. The room had transformed into something else, something darker. And just like before, the 3:33 a.m. clock blinked in the background, its red digits mocking me. I looked at the door, the keycard slots still glowing red. My only way out. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. And then, just as I thought I couldn't take it any longer, I heard the sound. A slow, deliberate knock just beyond the bathroom door. Knock. Knock. The door handle turned, and the door creaked open by itself. The hallway outside was pitch black. No light, no sound. Just the vast, empty darkness that seemed to stretch into infinity. I should have bolted. I should have run. But something cold and unseen kept me rooted to the spot. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the doorway, from the blackness that waited just beyond it. The whisper returned, louder now, clearer, "Come," to the door. I turned, slowly, toward the open doorway. A figure appeared in the shadows, barely visible but unmistakable distorted version of myself, the same hollow eyes staring at me. Its mouth stretched open in a silent scream. Without thinking, I stumbled forward, driven by a force beyond my control. The clock blinked again, 3:33 a.m., and the room seemed to shift as though reality itself had fractured. The last thing I saw before the darkness consumed me was the keycard slot glowing red. The door slammed shut. The world around me spun, but I couldn't focus. The eerie, suffocating silence of the room had consumed me. The shadows felt alive, watching me, moving, as if the hotel itself had grown sentient and was trying to trap me within its crumbling walls. I stumbled back toward the door, hands trembling as I grasped for the handle. But the door wouldn't open. I was trapped, stuck in this loop, in this nightmare, and no matter how much I tried to scream, the sound never left my throat. There was no one to help me, no one but the things that lurked in the dark, waiting. As I backed away from the door, my eyes fell on the faint light flickering through the crack beneath the door. The hallway outside was barely visible, but something was there. I could feel it, a presence just beyond the door, watching. Then the sound of wheels squeaking echoed through the silence. I turned, my heart racing. In the dim light of the hallway, I saw a housekeeper's trolley, slowly rolling down the corridor. The cart moved on its own, as if pushed by invisible hands. It rattled faintly, the soft clinking of the towels and cleaning supplies a sharp contrast to the heavy, oppressive silence that had settled over the hotel. The cart was illuminated by a single faint light from above, casting long, twisted shadows on the walls. The trolley was empty, but the faintest whisper of movement from behind it caught my eye. Someone was following it, hidden in the shadows, too faint to make out. I knew I should have stayed inside the room. I knew I should have bolted. The door locked myself in and never left. But the pull of the hallway was stronger now. Something beyond the door was calling me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt as though I had no choice but to go. I stepped cautiously toward the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob again. The faint wheel squeak grew louder, more pronounced. I could feel it, that something was coming for me, something dark, something wrong. The door swung open. The hallway stretched out in front of me, longer than I remembered, more distorted. The shadows grew darker with each passing step. The housekeeper's trolley was still rolling down the hall, its wheels creaking as it moved without direction, pushed by unseen hands. The soft, rustling sound of towels dragging across the floor filled the air, mingling with the distant, ominous whisper that seemed to echo off the walls. I stepped out of the room, my feet dragging against the plush carpet, which felt thicker than it should have. The trolley was now at the far end of the hallway, slowly making its way toward a far corner. But as I watched, it stopped. Right in front of room 3133. I froze. The air grew colder, the temperature dropping so quickly that my breath became visible, clouding in front of me. The shadows in the hall stretched and twisted, moving like living things. The hotel was closing in on me. Without thinking, I ran toward the trolley. I had to find out what was happening, had to escape this hellish loop. As I reached for the cart, the faint light above flickered once more, casting everything into darkness. But in the pitch black, I saw something else, something moving. It wasn't just the trolley, it was the shadows. I turned only to find myself face to face with the figure standing at the end of the hallway. Its face was shrouded in darkness, its body distorted in impossible angles. It reached out toward me, its hand elongated, fingers too long, too thin. The hallway seemed to contract around us, pulling me toward the creature. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped. Suddenly, the trolley jerked forward, its wheels screeching in the silence as if the figure had pushed it from behind. It rolled right past me, the towels spilling out of the cart, forming piles on the floor. The figure lunged. I barely had time to react. It was too fast, too terrifying. It wrapped its fingers around my wrist, pulling me toward the trolley. As I struggled, the faint light flickered once more, illuminating the room beyond me, room 3133. The door was wide open, as if inviting me to enter. The key card slot glowed a brilliant red. The room was the same as it had always been, but the figure was closer now, its cold breath on my neck, its whispers filling my ears. "Stay with us." The moment I tried to fight back, the entire hotel shook. The lights flickered out. The shadows consumed everything. The door to room 3133 slammed shut. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know where are you watching from. Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.